Now, the BBC has become too woke for working class viewers who are tuning out of the broadcast.
A survey of over 2,000 people has found more than half of viewers think the BBC News has become too politically correct, while its quality has declined. Well, who are they tuning into? That's right, it's Talk TV. Hello. We won't name the other channel mentioned.
Well, who are we going to speak to? No one's better to talk about this than campaign director at Defund the BBC, Rebecca Ryan. And you know, I remember fighting the good fight about the BBC and the way they covered certain political parties and certain political narratives on the news for a long time. I think it was Lord Pearson in the House of Lords had a BBC monitoring thing. This is going back to sort of like 2009. But it's true, isn't it? Essentially, people, whether it's tuning into the news and feeling like you're being campaigned to, or whether it's watching whatever it may be, Strictly
Woke
Come
dramas,
Dancing,
yeah.
and find that all of a sudden you've got, you know, instead of just a man and woman dancing together, all these other sort of variations on a theme, or whether it's watching your favourite drama to find, you know, Doctor Who's now a woman or XY. It's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And I'm afraid this poll doesn't really tell us anything that new, but it's always good to see the data sort of borne out from what we hear every day from our supporters. The fact is that the BBC is it's just preaching to people. And it's interesting to see the comeback here from the BBC as well. We reach more people in the lower socioeconomic sector than anybody else, but that's because they're trapped. That these people are sitting ducks and they're just being preached to by a BBC they're forced to pay for when they don't want to pay for it. We see time and time again with polls that 2/3 of the country want to get rid of the licence fee. They want this to be a voluntary thing that people pay for if they want it. You know, if the middle class people want to pay for the BBC because it agrees with everything they talk about in their dinner parties, then let them pay for it. But the working class people are sick to death of being preached to. And yeah, this bears out. And the frustrating thing is that we've had a Conservative government with an 80-seat majority who've done absolutely nothing about it. And that's where people are getting really frustrated now. We're saying, look, we voted you guys in to do something about this. And you know, you haven't delivered, and that's what's frustrating. So, but something has to change, and the sooner people realise that actually you don't have to pay for the BBC, if you switch your sort of mindset and rather than waiting for things to be broadcast to you, and you actually just watch on demand and catch up content, as long as it's not iPlayer, you don't actually have to pay for a TV licence. And more people are clocking onto this, which is why the BBC is in serious financial trouble.
Yeah, but they still get £3.5 billion pounds a year from us, the licence fee payers, which is just an enormous amount of money. I knew one BBC One controller who was just going into the job, I won't name names, who asked their predecessor, what's the best advice you've got? It said, you will not. The most difficult thing you're going to encounter is how to spend all the money they give you. So let's never buy into the BBC saying, oh, we haven't got enough money. They've got more money than Croesus. But what the news now, I've been watching the BBC News, much to Miss Phillips' displeasure all this week.
It's more my astonishment, because I always tune into the Today programme in the mornings and you tell me off about it. What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Well, I do, for the purpose of research. So the first 20 minutes, virtually every night, of the 6 p.m. news is the plight of the Palestinians in Gaza, with a quick quote from the Israelis at the end saying, you know, we're carrying on with our campaign. So to say it's pro-Palestine is the understatement of the century. Plus, you have all these dramas. I remember a few years ago tuning into EastEnders, and you know, the Queen Vic, the pub, all the Cockneys, all the locals from Albert Square are all in there having a great. It was EU night in the Queen Vic.
Oh,
you know,
no.
they are imposing their North London dinner party circuit values onto people who don't know anything about this. They want good old-fashioned dramas, good old-fashioned comedies, and fair and balanced news.
Night.
Yeah, EU night in the Queen Vic.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? And this is the thing that's so frustrating for people, particularly people outside the M25 who just don't mix in those circles where they have these views about sort of waving the EU flag and all of that kind of nonsense. So this is the frustrating thing. And as we've talked about recently, the prosecutions that are going on, it's second only to driving prosecutions of people who are, being brought before the courts and fined thousands of pounds for not funding this. And the BBC is actually obliged by its charter, the charter that allows it to essentially tax people, because it is a tax on live broadcast TV. That charter obliges them to deliver impartial news and content, and they are failing on that time and time again. And yet they're still able to force people who want to watch live broadcast TV to pay for this nonsense. And it has to come to an end, doesn't it?
Let me tell you, Rebecca, I'm tempted to say forgive them, for they know not what they do. They are victims of their own groupthink. They don't even know that millions of people
never met a working class person in their life.
Exactly. They all went to Eton and Oxbridge. They don't know what working class people are thinking, and that's why working class people have had enough of their